You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. The Five Rings Podcast, 2016 Rio Summer Olympics edition on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Edition of the Five Rings Daily. I'm Duane. Rollins. Kevin Laramee joins me as always. Kevin, I normally say hi to you, but I'm not going to bother today because I have a three-time world champion and Olympic gold medalist on the line. Ben Rutledge joins us from British Columbia. Ben, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. We wanted to have you on because this is wrapping up the rowing competition at the Olympics, and obviously there's been some controversy around this in terms of the course and the amount of delays there's been, and so on and so forth. And for people that don't follow rowing day in day out, I think it's probably been a bit disappointing on the Canadian front. Although they did get a medal this morning, we should note right off the top. Let's start there. Are you surprised by the Canadian performance in this regatta?
Well, we start with Patricia Obi and Lindsay Denerick. No, those two that won a silver medal this morning were lived up to their expectations, and they were a world-class crew and came through when it mattered most. So in terms of that, yeah, I think they did exactly what they wanted to do. The rest of the Canadians, I'm sure that they might be wondering, why aren't they also up on the podium? So as being involved in rowing Canada, the expectations are always that you're there to win a gold medal, and these athletes have been brought up on that and seen that as generations go through when they're younger, and they'll be disappointed, and that's it's unfortunate. But I think there's also some highlights that still the women's 8 had a great race yesterday, and I'm looking forward to see how they can do tomorrow too.
Yeah, and they going in, I think, were probably the most likely to contend to win a gold medal in this competition. Ben, I think that's probably fair to say. If you look at the results at the World Championships over the last 4 years, there's only been a couple medals here and there. Is that just a reflection of the rest of the world getting better, or is there something that Rowing Canada can do to improve that standing and to get better results moving forward?
I think with all sports, the bar keeps getting elevated every year. And in Canada, I think we've tried to do our best to keep up to that. Every quadrennial, different athletes come into the mix, different coaches come into the mix, different support staff come into the mix. So a lot of factors kind of play. I think what you did see, though, is that some seasoned veterans, seasoned veterans across the board are continuing to win medals. They look at New Zealand men's pair. They haven't lost a race in 60 races or almost 8 years. Women's pair, same thing. So with more sport funding coming in, the best athletes are realizing, well, I can continue to be the best. So if we haven't had those medals before, it's becoming harder and harder to crack into that sort of upper echelon.
Ben, when you look... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, no, I think that's just that's a big part of it. So I think Rowing Canada has definitely put everything they can in terms of what they believe is the right plan, and how much I think it's the best funded quadrennial ever for rowing. So we might just need one of those exceptional performances to kind of break through and break the mold for the younger generation. Someone like Penny Alexiak, right? She hammered through, and now it's like, oh, now we believe. And it just took a talented 16-year-old who wants to do it, and then you start following those footsteps.
I want to bring you back to the beginning of the competition, Ben. In Rio, day one of the Olympics, the controversies in the rowing department, the capsizing because of a sofa, the wind, people going off course. Have you seen the beginning of a rowing competition at the Olympics that started off like this?
Not quite in this fashion. There have been weather delays. I think the number and let's call it severity of the weather, I think, is a surprise. And that's something that I think the athletes, it's hard to kind of come up with a plan in terms of what you do to deal with that. So I think they've handled it pretty well. There are a couple instances where athletes, I think, have doubled up on the women's side, and it makes it challenging to do two races, and especially if your mind is kind of all over the place. But I think the best athletes look at weather conditions and say that's a good thing, right? So that's their advantage. They can go, I'm more experienced. I kind of know how to deal with this, and they can actually leverage that to their better race. Less experienced athletes look at that and go, oh no, I don't know what to do here. So it's just a matter of how you frame it in your mind and what you feel you're capable of doing.
Ben, when you're looking at the weather, you mentioned the weather and the race competition, more waves in the water of the lagoon in Rio. Does that affect time? Does it affect the psyche of an athlete, of a rower that maybe has his sights on a world record time if the conditions are there? Does it affect his performance or his mentality towards the performance when he knows the weather and the condition are not necessarily going to be the easiest for them to achieve a world record eventually?
Yeah, well, the interesting part about rowing is they actually don't really have world record times. We call them world best times. And it's kind of just a funny sort of subtlety to it. And the reason is due to weather. It's not like a swimming pool where you have there's a roof when the water can be kept to a certain temperature, a certain depth. It's almost impossible to control all those variables. So in rowing, actually, it's just a world's best time. And it's sort of one of those things that you don't really hang it on your wall, or no one gives you anything for it. I know I've got some swimmer friends who have world records, and it's part of the sport where you get a certificate. You've got a current world record. In rowing, it's something that you could probably look up on Wikipedia, but it's not generally something that you go for. But what you do go for is obviously your best performance and a medal. And I think when you've got weather, you just do your best that you can. Rowing tries to do the best they can in terms of seeding the lanes as well. Top athletes should be given the best opportunity to have their best performance. So when you've got a crosswind, it's more advantageous to be closer to the wind. The waves are smaller, and you don't get caught in the trough of the waves so much. So if you do well in previous races, you have a better seeding. So then you're going to be able to be a better position in the next race to deal with the conditions. So it's all about every race doing your best, and the sport understands that weather is a part of it, and they try to give the best athletes the best opportunity to win.
Ben, I can pinpoint one of the moments that made me fall in love with the Olympic Games was going back to '84 and the men's eights winning there. It's always been one of my highlights of the games. Obviously, your crew, the last Olympics, it's been such a great moment that I focus a lot of my first week attention on. I was very disappointed to know that Canada didn't even attempt to enter a men's eights in this particular Olympic cycle. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that decision and the decision to split the boat up, split the men up into 2 fours, and whether or not that was the right direction to go.
Well, I think first of all, there's never any certainty in sport, and although there is a cultural, call it bias to Canada entering an 8, I think Rowing Canada had a pretty logical reasoning for them doing it, and rightfully so. If we always felt in our 8 that if we split it up into a 4 or a pair, that we could have won medals in the other events. And top athletes know their sort of abilities and what they can do in training. And I call it a good logistical or a good logical thought plan. They did have athletes coming back from the current and past Olympics that have won medals. So they are the right type of athlete. They've obviously got the right mental game, the right physical game, that they should be able to pull that together. Whether it is actually going to happen, that's another thing. And I hopefully started that off with there is no certainty in sport. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And what I think will start to happen now is people are going to start asking these questions. And the biggest, it's just hard to, as someone who's won a gold medal in 8, I think, well, yeah, the 8 probably a decent way to go. It allows a bigger program to be run, and you can kind of draw people in because more people think they have a chance at a seat. And when you've got past history in it, people can believe. Bring Penny Alexiak sort of back into it, right? Now people believe. In the men's 8, we believe, and that's a big part of the headspace. And then if you end up creating a 4 or pair out of the athletes that don't make the 8, they also believe. And so it was a different run, and Rowing Canada had I think it was a smart, logical thought plan, and they had the right athletes, and unfortunately, I don't think it didn't materialize.
Ben, if we're looking at the rowing competition as a whole, what is a performance that caught your attention this year in Rio?
A standout one. Well, I love Ovi and Jenerick. They're the 2 lightweight doubles that won a silver this morning. Contrast the two. Lindsay Jenerick, seasoned veteran, 34 years old. I used to live with her in a small, I think we had 6 rowers in a 5-bedroom house 10, 15 years ago. And she was been top of the game as an under 23 athlete. And then now she's paired up with one of the best under 23 athletes. So they're kind of these 2 that have the similar sort of background. They're from the same club, rowing club, same town. And yeah, just to watch that all come together, because I know I had such a disappointing 2012, was just, brought tears to my eyes this morning.
Ben, I want to take you back to your own career for a little bit to end the interview, and particularly we're going to get to Beijing, but I want to go to Athens first and get your perspective on what the disappointment in Athens did for you as on a personal level as an athlete to drive you forward to Beijing. How did that play a factor in your success later on?
Well, it's funny. You can kind of be in any sort of motivation. What you drive your motivation from, you can either be sort of this sort of neutral position and you want to go higher. Again, Penny Alexiak doesn't really have a past, right? You just want to get better and do your best. And then there's sort of the other side of it where you've been kicked off the horse and you want to get back. That obviously that's kind of the second scenario. So for me, it was, getting kicked off the horse and wondering whether you want to get back on it. So it was tough to actually just make the decision to get back on it. But once you make that decision, it's just all pure, for me anyways, it was just a pure, let's go forward from here. And you can, in your mind, and however you want to frame it and allow you to continue to improve, because that's also the other thing, is if you kind of get yourself to a high, winning a world championships for the Olympics. What really motivates athletes is to continue to improve. So physiologically, technically, all these other factors that come into it, you have to find a way to look for those little pieces. Otherwise, you can't get through the training. It's just too long and boring. So for me, once I made the decision, it was go, and flat out. I had other people around making the same decisions, and we believed we could do it. And you just kind of go for it. And I think that ultimately simplifies the process.
And 8 years later, what are your memories of the day that you captured that gold medal? I imagine it was a blur at the time. How do you reflect upon it now?
So happy. I mean, it's one of those things where I will say that I never believed the statement, it's about the journey, not the destination, until I won a gold medal. And I think a lot of young athletes might have that, and you hear it all around, the journey, the process, until you actually step away from the sport and go, that was pretty special. That daily sort of, call it grind with people that are going through something similar as you. It was so special. And I'd have to admit, even coming across the line in 2008, almost a bit of a sense of relief was probably the biggest emotion. And then afterwards you started to have sort of these more like, that was really cool and special and hands in the air. But there's lots of different emotions that come into it. But I just felt proud to be part of such a strong group, and people wanting to be a part of something bigger than who they were, and just excel.
And you mentioned the women's eights are in with the medal chance tomorrow and a strong boat there. If you could give them a little piece of advice right now, if you were there, what would you do? What would you say to them in that night before their big race?
You're not gonna forget how to row. There's a lot of nerves and things that'll run through your head, seeds of doubt. The ladies have put in the miles. They've done everything they can. They've been on the podium before, and it's just about maintaining and trying to find that little bit, maybe that little bit extra, but not to let any sort of seeds of doubt creep in that it's not possible, and ultimately stick to your plan. In an 8 especially, there's 9 different people. The 9th person obviously trying to keep everybody on the plan, the coxswain, but 8 people, you need to stick to the plan. You can't do it by yourself. So believe in the team, believe in yourself, and I think all of Canada will be there for you at the finish line.
All right, Ben, we appreciate your time. It's early out your way, so thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the games.
Hey, not at all. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's Kevin of the Sports Podcasting Network. On SPN, on top of What's the Score, the Sports News Quiz, you can find a plethora of great sports podcasts. Hardwood Radio, Gridiron Radio, Sports, It's in the Game, Scuderia F1, the second most listened to F1 podcast in the whole world, Soccer Today, live radio shows like Open Lines After Dark, MLS Postgame Show, 202 Soccer Podcast, Off the Woodworks, and much, much more. All that on the Sports Podcasting Network.com.
Welcome back, and thanks again to Ben for taking the time. I don't know if we've had Silken. We had Silken Malman on really early on, so I think she probably won 3 world championships, but 3 world championships, Olympic gold medalist.
Katrina Lemedon, we had her early on, and Easter Fireman, so she won. She did at least equivalent the Ben Rutledge
it's been an incredible week.
accomplishment.
Yes, I think I heard a bit of it in the background there.
Yeah, that was a Penny Oleksiak replay again. I'm so smitten that without even knowing, I just play her all the time.
There you go. Now, like I said, I think that's our second Canadian gold medalist we've had on there. We also had a Pan Am gold medalist who races later today, so I want to give a little nod to friend of the show, Evan Dunphy, who goes off at 2:30 Eastern today. Evan, we're all cheering for you. One of the great guys in sports, a whistleblower in terms of the Russian stuff, and we hope that karma is a real thing today, right?
2:30 p.m. Eastern. I will get that feed and watch the entirety of the race walking event today. Go, Evan. We are with you, and we know that a lot of people are with us as well.
All right. Let's get into our medals now. We have, we'll start again, as we always do. We start with the negative so we can end positive. Let's start with the wood medal, Kevin, and I'm going to start with you today. What's your wood medal of the day?
We were talking off air for the last couple of days how we were surprised that there was no positive test. We have 2, and I'm saying this sounds like a smile, but no, I'm not really happy, and that's why we have those in our wood category. I say not happy. At least we're getting results from it, so it's better than some Olympics that we had none, and like a year later, there was like 70% of them were doped. So 2 positive tests. Chen Shini, 4th in the 100-meter women's butterfly event. She got suspended for hydrochlorozoid in her body, some presence. It's a type of diuretic that helps you keep your performance in check and the ratio of mass of muscles and all those things. So that's why she was tested. And Silvia Danekova as well from Bulgaria of EPO in a long distance track event. So she has been suspended as well. Those are the 2 tests that came out early this morning. Danekova, Shenjini got caught on last Sunday, the day of her race, and it was traces in her blood. So the timing of it as well is very well. They caught her. That's how it feels for Danekova. It's traces of EPO. It's different. She says it might be in one of my supplements. So basically, she's taking the low road of blaming the supplement. We all know we're used to this now. It's more than 10 years of WADA and all this. You are responsible of what you put in your body. If it's written on the label or not, you're the one who's taking the risk by taking a supplement that you're not necessarily 100% confident with. So we have those 2 tests today.
Yeah. Look, you put it in the wood medal. I'm almost inclined to put it in one of the positive medals because of exactly what you said there earlier. If they're catching them, Look, let's not be naive. There are dirty athletes at every Olympic Games, at every World Championships. That's the nature. That's human nature, right? People are going to try and push the boundaries, and that's going to be including doing things which are cheating. So the fact of catching them means that the testing is working, at least in these cases, so that reduces the amount of them that are impacting the events themselves. I'd still rather catch them before the events, because if they win medals, and in this case they did not, but if they do win medals, they're still taking the moment away from the athletes that eventually get them. And I always regret that. I think that's, at least, here in Canada with Becky Scott, at least had her ceremony, but it wasn't there on the day, and that can't be the same, right? It can't be the same. At any rate,
cannot, that's
I'm
for
glad
sure.
they're catching them and
No, exactly. So Duane, no, that's for sure. So that's interesting. Yeah, very much. But when you have athletes like the ones that got tested positive this time around, it's, at least you mentioned, it's positive. Yes, it's in the positive category, but only 2 out of all the tests that happened over the last few days is a very minimal aspect of the situation, because it's the beginning of track and it's beginning of track season today. But I have a little surprise for you, Duane. Before we continue with your wood medal, I have right now a little souvenir from 20 years ago.
In this stadium, they're expecting something extraordinary. I think they'll get it.
If we have a bit of a tailwind, I think that world record will look a bit shaky too.
Christie broke. Saw Christie a moment ago. Bolden. They'll come to the set and then they'll run for their lives. Away, Bolden out well. Fredericks reasonably well. Full start, is it?
Oh, I don't know who.
And a couple can't believe it. Azimwa. Mitchell seems happy. Bailey. Now, Azimwa's been called, I think, and can't believe it in lane 7.
Now, interestingly enough, Bolden had a bad reaction when that was called up, and so has Azinwa. So I want to see whether they can actually collect themselves and get back.
He looked unhappy. Bolden is going to get the mark against him. He didn't get the best start. Watch this. He's moved. He has moved, and then he didn't gather quite so quickly. Position. Bailey takes his time. Mitchell down, ready. I'll go to set in a moment. Away this time, Bolden, not so fast. No, again. Was it Linford? If it was, he's out. He's out of the Olympic final. If it was Christie. He's pleading with the officials here. There's Fredericks, who can compose themselves and win this 100 final.
This is where experience will show.
Lane 2 vacant. The Olympic champion out of it.
I hope for Linford Christie's sake that Frankie Fredericks wins now.
He's in the middle. Mitchell and Bailey flank him, and then Bolden almost set. Away. Fredericks not bad. Mitchell beat him out though. Bolden starts to gather, so does Bailey. Fredericks coming at them, so Bailey. Bolden in front. Bailey over the top. Bailey's won it and broken the world record.
Ben Johnson, move over. We have a new Canadian star on the track.
What a race and what a run. He came from the clouds. You could see it halfway that he was in the frame. He loves it in a hostile environment. He's a Canadian on USA soil, and he's taken Bolden and he's taken Fredericks, and I don't think an American's got a medal of any colour. It was a sensational race. He's broken the world record, 9.84.
And only with a 0.7 tailwind. You're allowed a 2 metre per second tailwind. So how fast could he go under better conditions?
And here's Christie, and we should applaud. A great career.
And a little souvenir, Duane, from 1996, Donovan Bailey winning the gold.
It's good to hear, and I apologize for the drop there, but sometimes it happens. So yeah, I was just saying that the wood medal was mine. So Kevin, I didn't hear how you finished from that, so I'm just gonna.
Oh, we didn't hear your wood medal, so just go with your wood medal, please.
Oh, my wood medal was. I want to talk about how much I miss boxing. And this is kind of a positive wood because there's been a couple Canadian boxers that I've watched. Mandy Bouillon this morning, the Chechen Wolf, which is the greatest nickname ever. He's a Toronto boxer. I butcher his last name, so I'm just going to call him the Chechen Wolf for now. Both of them won their first round match for Canada, but I just kind of miss not having a greater platform of Canadian boxers out there to watch, because it's just kind of a look in every so often now. And I do enjoy watching amateur boxing quite a bit when it's on. So I miss not having it. I was reminded of that this morning just before we went to air, that certainly it is still a sport that's worth watching. And I hope that the two Canadian boxers, and there's a third woman that's also involved in the competition who hasn't fought yet, can continue to have some success so that I'll continue to get access to them. I mean, obviously I could watch the stream if I want, but there's so much going on that I need to follow that has Canadian angles that it's hard to check in sometimes, Kevin.
And not just that, Duane, boxing is a sport that has come unfortunately a long way from its heyday. We're talking about a sport that has come back to the underground. Basically, you have a few stars, but trying to name me 5 pro boxers nowadays, Duane. It's not that easy than 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Even 20 years ago was even easier.
Well, yeah, you know the biggest names, but you don't necessarily know the guys that are grinding it out day to day.
Exactly. So that's very interesting. All right, let's move to my bronze medal. The track and field started today, and on the track, we already have a world record in the first long event, 10,000 meter. Aymaz Ayana of Ethiopia obliterated the field with the best performance in the history of this sport. Everybody seemed like they were not even close to the same speed over 10,000 meter. Well, over 1,000 meters, she was already first and just plowed through. She just destroyed literally everybody else. And it seemed like people were slower. Hey, half of that field did personal best on the day. She was just one notch above everybody else. Gold medal for Aymaz Ayana on the 10,000 meter for Ethiopia. And it's quite a performance today.
I actually had made that my gold medal.
Damn.
Yeah, look, it's 29:17:45. That time is outrageous. It's outrageous. You cannot comprehend how fast that time is. There were 4 runners under 30 minutes. No one runs under 30 minutes for the women's 10,000 meter. Someone ran under 30 minutes today, did not medal. That race as a whole. So what I'll adjust it is to talk. I'll adjust it a little bit, and I'll make this my bronze medal instead.
Right.
That the bronze medal is the fact that one of those 1993 world records on the women's sides, which there seems to be a whole lot of them for some reason. Anyway,
wink.
One of them fell, and look, there's controversy around that whole lot for some reason right now still, but hopefully this turns out to be okay, and there's no evidence of the Ethiopians having any issues like that. So see one of those ancient world records finally fall, especially when it came from the peak era of the, if you know what I mean, going on, then it is kind of good to see happen. So hopefully maybe the one that I hate the most, that 100 meter, can fall sooner rather than later, because that every time I see that time up on my screen, I get stabby. So we'll nobody like that, but we'll make that my bronze medal would be the fall of a world record that is so old.
Nobody likes a stabby, Duane. I will go with my silver medal, Duane. Simone Biles of the United States all-around competition in gymnastics. She won with great performances, over a 15 on the floor routine. She had quite an impressive performance, her and of course the second Ali Reisman as well of the United States. But what a performance by Simone Biles. She had a world record score. She's untouchable. She'll be having a lot more medals in the individual events later this week, but her performance in the all-around, first of all, on the team where the United States won, but on the all-around performance of one gymnast, what a performance last night. It's great performance by her. I do have as well Ellie Black singled out in that situation for Canada, 5th best ever finish for a Canadian all-around single gymnast in the Olympics, but Simone Biles, wow, what a gymnast.
Yeah, well, no, precisely. And the American women are on a different level for sure, Kevin. And we talked about that the other day, and the amount of pressure that they must feel. And both sort of spoke to that. It is the prime event of the first week. Well, that and the swimming, obviously, for the Americans down in their network coverage. And absolutely to come through with that amount of pressure is something that is, phenomenal, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around. And that's like what the Olympics is all about: is coming into fruition. All your training under that immense pressure and spotlight. I mean, female gymnasts in the United States get a lot of pressure day to day, regardless. But the Olympics, it's tenfold, right? So for her to do what she did in such a precision sport is amazing. And you mentioned Ellie Black, who had a very disappointing team competition, I think, failing to qualify for an individual apparatus. And I still think that they do the apparatus qualifying wrong. I mean, people that are in the gymnastics world tell me it would be too hard, but I did have one shot on your first day of the Olympics. And then so it's so out of mind at the time that suddenly just your chances in that are like only, I think 16. You could put 16 women into the finals even. That might make it better. I don't know. I'm not in gymnastics world.
Or maybe I don't know. It's true though, because you're trying to squeeze everything in tight timetables of few days, and for the athlete they need time to recover, especially sports like gymnastic where there's impact on the body. Literally your hands get blisters. Those silly thing like a blister can become very intricate as how you move forward if it happens. So you're right, it's hard to judge on one day and make them like you decide what apparatus they're going to be on the team qualification. It's not easy. It's a lot of pressure on one performance, but it's kind of what gymnastic is based on, where this performance, it's all on the line for you right now. Can you handle that pressure?
Yeah. It just seems so early in the tournament for that kind of, I don't know. It just seems early. It's usually like that because it's always the first day of the Olympics too, right? Like you're barely awake and suddenly your chances are gone. It just seems cruel to me, but that's maybe because I'm not in that world. All right, I'm going to move to my silver now, and my silver is we're going to talk about Penny, I imagine, at some point, and obviously we've talked to death about.
Don't have to wait too long to have a medal left.
Yeah, I assumed you'd go gold with that. So I'm going to give some props to the woman who won co-gold with her. It's Simone Manuel. This is the first Black American to win a swimming gold. This is a woman that was very gracious, I thought, that was very accepting and loved the fact that she was sharing the moment with Penny. If you look at the U.S., like Team USA and Team Canada on Twitter, they were kind of having some fun with it. There's a photo with the two moms together. She ran a phenomenal race, just like Penny did. We're in this country not going to talk to her about her a lot because she's not ours, quote unquote. But especially when you consider like the
Jim Crow aspect,
yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to make this too political, but this is a very difficult time in America right now with race relations. And certainly there's a long history of the pool is a triggering aspect in that if you go back to the civil rights movement and
it's like
public schools.
It's like the bus, Duane. It's they had like they couldn't go to the pool, literally. That was what was happening in the South in the Jim Crow era, and the pool was like the bus, like the concert halls, one of the places in society where it was the most reflective of that aspect of then the racism that was blatant in those days.
Yeah, and for a Black American to win a gold medal, and she was crying during the national anthem when it played, showing some pride in the country there. And look, I think it was a phenomenal story. And if we hadn't had our girl win it here as well and dominate the coverage that's followed, there's nothing wrong with that because we're very excited for her, and she's a lovely young lady that's taking it's Canada's sweetheart right now for sure. But nonetheless, I think some of that other story from her co-winner is something that we need to also reflect upon because it is a nice story, and the Olympics are about the world coming together and sharing in each other's glory. So I think that we should have mentioned her. So I wanted to make sure to get her in as my silver medalist. Kevin, I think that we already know where you're going with the gold. So why don't you just jump in now?
The golden penny. 50 after 50 meter after the turn, she was 7th. In her own words, she put her head down, she bit her lip, and went as fast as he could. Rings a bell, doesn't it? Kind of heard that story before this week with Penny, and this time it was for gold. This time it was for all the marbles. They split it with Manuel, granted, but she won it. And the 20-second that it took her to finally turn around and watch the scoreboard are going to be etched in Canadian sports, if not sports history. The first millennium athlete to ever win a medal. The first person born after January 1st, 2000 to win a medal at the Olympics, Duane. So it's not just our penny. It's not just the Canadian golden penny. It's the millennial golden penny.
Yeah, well, the world They BBC confirmed that she's the first millennial to win the true millennial to win the Olympic gold medal, Kevin.
Yep, exactly. So that's my gold medal for the day. She was still happy, and she said again that she thanks every single swimmer of Team Canada that helped her to grow this quickly and became the best swimmer ever of Canada's history in her first Olympic week. But there's still some work to do. There's some relays, and you know what? She could maybe get 5 medals out of the games.
Well, Victor Davis has the record for most medals by an individual in the Summer Games with 4. And we've talked about Victor Davis on this show before. I have anyway. Kevin's too young to really. Well, you absolutely are too young to remember Victor Davis. He retired in 1988, passed away not shortly long after that, unfortunately, in a drunk driving accident. One of the great Canadian Olympians that I hope never gets forgotten. But certainly I think that he would be happy to share that mantle with Penny. And I suspect they are in with a very good chance to medal in the medley relay today. So she may break it today, and certainly the most in any single games. It is very rare that Canada would have a star of the swimming. And on the female side, there hasn't been a dominant, obviously because Canada doesn't win golds in the relays, and that's going to be something that's hard to overcome. It's very difficult for Canada to have the standout star performer of the games, and Michael Phelps is destroying everyone's attention in terms of the pool. But on the female side, she's among the stars. She's among the world stars, is what I'm saying. It goes beyond. She won 4 medals. She may win 5, and one of them was gold. And that gold is what tips that balance, so that she's suddenly now part of the international conversation, not just the Canadian one, because she is an Olympic champion and a multiple medal winner. And as I said, it's not really her fault that she can't really win golds in the relays. And the Americans and the Australians on the female side are so far above the rest of the world when it comes to the relays that it's really just a competition for bronze. So in many ways, you could look at those 2 relay bronzes and look at them as rest of the world golds, right? So it's been a phenomenal meet for her. And I would argue, pound for pound, she's had the best meet in this competition outside of Phelps, perhaps. And even when you look at Phelps, that's what was expected of him. This is a woman that came, a teenager, a young woman that came out of nowhere, literally nowhere, to do this and to take a nation by storm. And she's handled it with grace. It's going to be very interesting to see what the next 4 years, what the next 4 months of this woman's life are going to look like. Suddenly she's gone from, I'm sure she lives in my side of the city, right? I might have passed her on the street a month ago.
Yeah, literally.
I could have. And that's not going to happen anymore. So it's going to be a major adjustment for her. And we'll see how she handles that next step. But there's nothing to indicate. And particularly, this is where I am going to bring up her athletic family and the fact that her brother plays for the National Hockey League as something that she can tap into at this point to help her with that transition, because she has people in her family that have an element of athletic fame already, so that it's not something she's taking on by herself. So that's going to be interesting to see. And her family was particularly charming. The big tough hockey player was crying.
but it's
won a gold medal.
It's not Penny Oleksiak, sister of Jamie Oleksiak, player of the Dallas Stars, anymore. It's Jamie Oleksiak, brother of
she's
the Golden Penny.
Pound for pound, for sure.
It's the Golden Penny and her family.
Yes, exactly. All right, my gold medal is the Fiji Rugby Sevens winning gold for that country and the overall reaction.
Oh, absolutely, Duane. It's the rugby Fiji. Finally, they have a medal in the Summer Olympics.
Yeah, and we expected that coming in a little bit, but certainly for them to win gold and to finish that off, and the emotion that was there at the end of it for them was quite remarkable. It's a small island. What is it? It's 900,000 people live on 50 islands, half of which have no one on it. It's really an incredible story of how a nation, no matter how big, no matter how small, can take to a sport and be dominant in it, can take it to their own, and why sport doesn't have boundaries, right? It just so happens that the reason they hadn't won an Olympic gold medal up till now is because the Rugby Sevens wasn't in the Olympics. They would have won medals had they not. They're unlikely to win many others, but this is the sport that matters to them, just like ice hockey matters here a little bit more than other sports. Just like, back in the day, the field hockey in India were synonymous, right? There's a lot of single sport countries out there that they just love a particular sport and they're dominated at it and they show excellence in it, and it just demonstrates that athleticism is not something that one place in the world can hold complete hold of. And Fiji demonstrated that brilliantly with athletes that are I know they're superstars there. They play professionally around the world. So like, let's not make this a rags to riches story here, but nonetheless, for that nation and for the fans that were there, who were an amazing, colorful display throughout the Rugby Sevens tournament, just an absolute deserving gold medalist in my mind for the day here. And as we've said a bunch of times throughout this, Rugby Sevens slam dunk success in this Olympics.
Definitely one of the best decisions the IOC has taken in a long time.
All right. On that note, Kevin, I think we should wrap up. We have an interview scheduled on Soccer Today on the soccer side of this in 15 minutes. That is going to preview the Premier League. So, Kevin, until that time, I'll let you say goodbye, as always.
Stay tuned to the Five Rings Daily Podcast tomorrow, again, for Day 8. And until tomorrow, own your podium, folks. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.